Hi, I'm Bob Ethington.
And I'm Nick Nicholas.
And this is From Akron and Beyond. For those of you who were listening to our last episode, you will know that we've been talking to Chris Butler, one of the most innovative and interesting musicians and basically just artistic people from the Northeast Ohio area.
Shoot, I'd love to be him.
And he's still here. He didn't leave.
I didn't leave.
He tried to leave, but he came back.
Tried to leave, and he came back. Right.
And
thank you.
When we, you bet, Chris. And when we left off with the last episode, we were talking about his experiences at Kent State, and specifically on May 4th, 1970, and how that inspired an album that he made, sort of a song cycle, really, called Easy Life. And I'd like to kind of pick it up there with the actual Easy Life album and what you were doing with that.
Well, Easy Life is a collection of songs, some new, some old, and new, I believe it came out in 98. Anyway, I didn't feel old enough to, or wise enough, or experienced enough to address what it was like to be in Kent before May 4th, which was wonderful. I did go on and on in the previous episode about the wonderful art department and English department, but for my record, I wanted to capture little things like having a really good girl, a real powerful girlfriend, and what it was like to go down Water Street and hear the bands, and to feel a creative growth because you were exposed with so many wonderful things because of the university. And I put all of that. Some of the songs were kind of maybe they were a bit not in the plot, but I would I could bend the plot a little to include some kind of experience or a joke or anyway. I tried to write. I guess it's actually called because it has songs and narration. Is it a cantata as opposed to an rock opera?
Yes, or oratorio, perhaps. Right?
Or perhaps, yeah. Right. All right. So, in fact, I actually gave a copy to Pete Townsend when I met him, Pete Townsend from The Who, and I never heard back from him. So, what does it say about, your heroes, etc.? Anyway, well, he was very nice. He was very nice. So I don't have a bad experience about Pete Townsend. That's the one famous person I don't have. Anyway, so Easy Life is a song cycle, and it ends with I try not to do covers because I'm a songwriter, and if I love a song, I try and write a song that gives me the same thrill as the other song that inspired it. But I did do a cover of Fortunate Son and at the end, and I stuck a spoken word piece on the end about the shootings. And there's no way you can any other person could sound like John Fogerty. So I did it as a slow, drony, almost blues, and used my voice, which I the lyrics, if you slow them down, really were relevant to what it was like being a kid, 20 years old, a student, worried about flunking out of college, which meant you would be drafted. When you were in college during the Vietnam era, you received a student deferment. Yep. It was a 2S deferment, and if you left college, the chances are you would be 1A, and that meant you were draftable. And a lot of people went to college just to stay out of the Army. Probably that's my story as well, because I didn't know what I wanted to do. But all of that is in the Easy Life album, but particularly in the lyrics to Fortunate Son, which is ironic because in the chorus he says, "I'm not a fortunate son," and I was not a fortunate son. I watched the powers that be destroy that wonderful life that I had, the easy life that I had in Kent before May 4th.
Right.
Chris, is that available anywhere to purchase?
Oh, yeah. It's on Bandcamp, and you're welcome to jump on Facebook and ask me for a copy. It is downloadable and for sale on Bandcamp. The record is called, I have an actual breathing CD of it, and plenty of those since people aren't buying CDs anymore. But Bandcamp for sure. And, every once in a while, I will put some in the local record stores like Time Traveler and all of that. They may have some Square Records, etc.
Highly recommended.
Thank you.
This is 1970, and so over the next few years, because at one point you end up joining Tin Huey,
right,
as a latecomer member to the band, at least at that point. What are you doing in when did you get into Tin Huey? Like 75, 76?
A little bit later. I was in the Numbers band.
That's when you were in the Numbers band.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
I graduated in 72. I didn't leave town. I was living in a house called Rock City, which I actually made a little short film about what it was like at Rock City. But I had a little guitar, and I was the housemaster, whatever that, it's a grandiose term for the guy to collect the rent. Rock City was this old Victorian that there must have been 25 people living there, but it was owned by the state of Ohio, so rent was like $60 a month, not a piece for everybody. All right, and
is this in Kent?
In this Kent, yeah.
Okay.
It's it got knocked down for the Haymarket or whatever it's called extension. In fact, both places I lived in got knocked out, like so many places.
I actually remember seeing that movie. I don't know where it was, like a party or something.
Yeah, it's a greaser party. Yeah. My friend Alan Peters shot a couple reels of 8mm film, and it was so much fun. And the people who lived at Rock City are still some of my best friends, and I wanted to honor them with a tribute to the wonderful creative life that we had there. Well, the house had 2 floors and they weren't connected, and I was in the downstairs. I was actually in the basement, but upstairs was Tom Chris, who was the original bass player for the James Gang. And he couldn't make his rent, even if it was like $5, for the month. But he had a big blue Gibson Thunderbird bass, and I bought it for $60. And I began to play the bass. I really liked Phil Lesh from the Grateful Dead in terms of how he played so melodically and busy and everything a bass player really shouldn't do. And but that really inspired me to learn scales and modes and all of this. And I continued to play some guitar, but I was really enjoying playing the bass. And at a certain point, Drake Gleason, the bass player for Numbers band, left right after their wonderful, and if you don't have it, man, you are missing something. Their record, Jimmy Bell, is still in town. They did a self-pressing, and then he quit. And Bob Kidney called and said, we need a bass player. And I said, well, I'm kind of a guitar player. But he said, no, we need a bass player. We have a guitar player. Come on down. So I auditioned, and I got the job. Now, here's the thing about bass. I love playing the bass, and I just sat in with them last Saturday. It is so much fun to play bass in that band. And that band, if you do not go to see the Numbers Band on a regular basis, shame on you. They are a local, if not international, treasure.
Big time treasure.
Big time, brilliant musicians. But what I love to play, all that noodling, is not what you do in the Numbers Band. Okay? The Numbers Band, the songs are structured, they are orchestrated, there's plenty of room for improvisation, but you better be tasty and you better not clog things up. So
don't step on the lyrics, whatever you do.
And don't step on the lyrics, because he is giving you a show, and he's a tough taskmaster, but I get it. He will yell at you, he will cuss at you, and I get it, because he is building, if you understand how he presents the song, how he theatrically invents the song, or presents the song, and what the backing music is supposed to do, it works. You have to relearn how to play an instrument in order to be in that band. Point, I was in the band when we would take breaks. I'm playing at JB's, either up or down, and there was always another band, either up or down, and more often than not, there was Tin Huey. Now, Tin Huey was this bizarre, experimental, kind of jazzy, kind of Velvet Underground-y,
kind of
Beefhearty, all the kraut bands, the kraut rock bands,
Soft Machine,
Can, Amandul 2, all kinds of E. But completely different to what my background was, and completely different for what Numbers Band were doing. So I was fascinated, and they had this young guy, like 19, who was just killer saxophone player and a real goofball. And that's Ralph Carney. And I would come up to them, and I had started a fanzine called Blank for the Akron, Kent area, because we weren't getting any ink from the Cleveland-based Scene magazine. They would very rarely write about any of the Akron bands, and there was this big scene going on here. And I wrote an article about how wonderful Tin Huey was, and I put the article in my little magazine, and I kind of got to know them tangentially, and that went on for a while, and then I got fired from the Numbers Band because I blew off rehearsal to get my picture taken because Stiff Records had come to town. They were chasing Devo, and they wanted to see. They got stuck with this snowstorm. They got their airplane got grounded, right?
Yeah,
you remember that? And and along now, there's a lot of catch up here that needs to be filled in. Nick had a record label called Clone Records. Well, it was Gorilla first, right?
Yeah, for one release it was
for
Gorilla,
one release? Okay.
and for 15 others it was Clone.
Clone, right. And Dave Robinson and Paul Conroy from Stiff were stuck here, right? And I believe you brought tapes. Were you at when we play them all the stuff?
Yeah. I was buying some records from Mark Mothersbaugh to send to Holland, and Stiff had even sent a photographer that just got done photographing Burning Spear in Jamaica, and there he was there to take pictures of all the bands. You know, I can't think of his name. He was just on a PBS special on famous photographers.
Yes,
and some of those cars were stuck in that. So it was like schools are closed, like a real. So me and him, the guy just come from Jamaica, wasn't even dressed. We're pushing cars in front of Mark Mothersbaugh's apartment. Getting him going.
I'm blanking on his name, and I'm waiting for that near under fire. He's a Dutch guy who also became a film director, and I got fired from the Numbers Band because Stiff was going to put out a record called the Akron Compilation, and they thought they had discovered the new Liverpool, and I didn't know this till later, but they had actually bet the corporate farm on this record. It's in this Stiff documentary. Well, I blew off rehearsal. There was no Waitresses band. So I just grabbed some friends, and we needed to have a picture taken, and that's the band. It was the Imaginary Band. But I blew off rehearsal, and you do not blow off. There's a working class factory mentality to being the numbers band. You rehearsed Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and you played Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. You rehearsed in the daytime.
Really?
And yeah. So that was one of the cool things about a residency is you didn't have to move your gear. You could
rehearsed at the club.
leave it all set up. Right.
Yeah,
you show up at 2:00
right.
and you rehearse and work on a new song. And Bob's method of writing was you would improvise on something that he is coming up with, and then he would edit. You keep that, don't keep that, and and so these songs were very. It was a long compositional process,
sort of organic in a way,
very organic, and they built from there, which is really interesting because you have a shape for the song which is usually unique. It's usually some bizarre rhythm. Things are in a different place, but it all makes sense because of the way they're crafted. Right. And it took a lot of work to do that. You do not blow off rehearsals.
Right.
I blew off a rehearsal. I got canned.
That's
and I said, that's it. I'm done with bands. Screw these bands. And then about a month or so later, Ralph Carney contacts me and says, hey, we're looking for another writer and a guitar player. I don't want to do bands. I'm sick of bands. I discovered I could write songs. I want to write songs. I didn't know what I was going to do with it. I don't, Numbers Band weren't going to do any of my songs. I said, okay, all right. So I went to Mark Price and we played, and it was kind of a fit. Next thing I know, I'm in Tin Huey. I'm the new boy.
Right.
And
that's with Stuart Austin on drums, Michael Elward was the other guitar player, Mark Price on bass, Harvey Gold on keyboards and guitar, Ralph Carney, of course, on saxophone, and
below me as the ringer, because the first thing you discover about Tin Huey is if you had to describe the music, it was smart people fighting, or there was always one too many instruments playing at any given time, right? But just the most creative bunch of people I have ever been lucky enough to be associated with. The Numbers Band were probably the best band I was ever in, but the most creative band was Tin Huey. Yeah. If you listen to those Townhouse tapes that are like from 72 or 73, holy mackerel, there's nobody playing Velvet songs or writing these original angular. I mean, wow, were they ahead of their time?
Yeah, there's Tin Huey was I think a truly unique band. There's no one else that really sounds like them. I mean, you can definitely pinpoint their influences. Oops, I use that word. Their inspirations. but anyone else that really actually sounds like them?
No,
I can't think of anybody.
A classic Akron and/or Summit County and/or Northeastern Ohio dilemma. If you wanted to be in a band, let's say in New York, and I've said this many times, but it's a pretty good anecdote. If you're in New York, you put an ad in the Village Voice, okay, rockabilly band forming, must have look, must have period instruments, right attitude, and you'll get 500 people. Okay, there's one guy, in every genre, there's one guy in Akron, Ohio. There's one rockabilly guy. There's one Ralph Carney. There's one Velvet Underground freak. There's one, old-time fiddle music guy. And if they want to be in a band, you have to play with people who are not like you.
Right.
And if you have enough time, which we have because we have basements, as you wisely said, or band houses, you can develop some kind of synthesis of all these different things and come up with a unique sound. And I think that's what Tin Huey is all about. Because I was a blues, jazz, funk R&B guy, and they were all of completely different aesthetic,
Right,
and
right.
yet somehow it comes together, and you create this unique thing.
And with the exception of Ralph, the other guys in the band had been playing together forever. I mean, they were friends
From kids.
as little kids. And so then they add Ralph, and then they add you, and then not long after that, I'm assuming, if I'm getting my chronology straight here, you guys get a record deal.
Yeah.
And
Well, there was a time too where when I released the early Tin Huey stuff on Clone, Chris wasn't a member then,
Right.
And those,
Right.
so they were playing around for a while.
right, yeah, oh yeah, definitely.
Could you? This is a huge plug, and I think you might even have some of them left for the B-side of the Tin Huey record. Poor Alfonso.
Yeah.
What a composition! This is like a live recording, a 2-track mic, right? Mm-hmm. What a composition that is, and that's from what 75?
No,
74?
76, 77.
Okay, and what an incredible composition as a jazz blues thing.
Yeah.
It is a It's fabulous, and it's got everything that Tin Huey is. Time changes, weird stops,
Right.
wonderful rich harmonies, curious melody lines.
Yeah.
Just great stuff.
Yeah. So we have talked on From Akron and Beyond, and I'm Bob Ethington. I'm with Nick Nicholas, my co-host, and our guest is Chris Butler. And we've talked on the show before with Harvey Gold, who was in Tin Huey, of course, and really have gone over sort of a lot of the history of Tin Huey with the record deal with Warner Brothers and stuff. And so if you want to hear more detail about that, you can go back on the podcast and check out the Harvey Gold episodes. We did 2 with him. I'd like to go sort of from the Tin Huey making the album and then kind of the record business kind of cratering at that point. You guys were kind of left out to hang. And then the fascinating fact that you had the Waitresses as an imaginary band even before you were in Tin Huey, and then this ended up being something that kind of became your escape route, so to speak, as things kind of fell apart.
A successful escape route.
Yeah, and so so if you want to go a little bit, I mean, we'd like to hear some about the Waitresses, and just how that actually started as an idea, and then how that band formed.
In 1970, I'd met a guy named Liam Sternberg, and I was living at 405 Longmere with my girlfriend, and he had blown into town. He was from Akron. He played guitar. I had my drum set finally down. We were set up in some basement somewhere, I don't know, and he bashed around, and he was itinerant, peripatetic, is that the right word?
Yeah.
And I think he wound up he ended up in England. He was importing, he would buy Telecasters and Stratocasters in America and import them. And he showed up back in my life in 1975. And on my turntable at the time was all this funk and Little Feat and kind of really funky stuff, and I love that music, and then along comes boom, the CBGB's bands and all the Sires, Talking Heads and Ramones, not so much because I thought they were funny, but it wasn't as inspirational or unique to me as Talking Heads or Television, and Liam shows up, and Liam says that he knows this guy with an 8-track machine, Rick Daly, in Akron, and I said, Television and Talking Heads were blew Little Feat off my turntable, and I'm playing this, and Liam could be very arrogant, and Liam said, "We could write better than this." He said, "I go, oh, okay, let's try to, and I kind of learned that I could write a song or at least a new chord progression, and we began to write, and I was in the numbers band, which was a full-time commitment, and Liam was playing guitar in some Elvis imitator band at bars that are in bowling alleys.
Bowling alleys, I remember that.
Right.
Out in Kent.
Yeah, out in Kent, right. And so we both had commitments, so what do? We have these songs now, and we had recorded them, and Rick Daley each playing on or gathering people from our bands or whatever to play on them. And Mark Price, also at Tin Huey, had a 8-track machine, but they were incompatible, which is another story. I could tell the other story. Really, it didn't matter. It didn't matter that one was DBX and one was Dolby, noise suppression. We would still, whoever was free, we would bounce the tapes back and forth. We never aligned them, or anything. That's why those records sound so weird. Anyway, one night I'm with Liam after both our gigs at a Perkins Pancake House in Kent. And, what do we do? Let's form imaginary bands. I had my fanzine. I go, oh, this is great. We could write all kinds of ridiculous stuff about it, and, how we got in trouble, or, the next album that's coming, a lot of baloney. You can do anything you want if it's imaginary. And he knew a singer named Jane Ashley, and he said, Jane Eyre and the Belvederes. What's a Belvedere? He goes, oh, that's a car I once had. All right, Jane Eyre and the Belvederes. And I was going to, would you like some more coffee, hon? And it was this amazing woman with a beehive, and I'm gesturing about, looked like
the British
Simpson.
Marge Simpson.
Yeah, Marge Simpson.
It wasn't blue here, but
it was red. It was flaming red. And I go, I guess the Waitresses. Okay, that's it. So we had these songs, and then we went to Nick to bring in and say, I don't know whether you chased after me or I chased after you. I forget, but somehow we wound up on...
You had a good spiel, and I fell for it.
A good spiel. Well, Liam was writing, and I was writing, and then I'm in Tin Huey, and I'm coming up with them. I'm a baby songwriter. I was writing for Tin Huey, but it was early days, so you play, you noodle, and you come up with something, and not all of it is perfect. And I had come up with a couple things that we had recorded, and you had put out, and
your song "Hump Day" is on the Tin Huey album.
The Hump Day, mm-hmm. Hump Day was written for Tin Huey, specifically because WMMS. I mean, there's a lot of chip on your shoulder attitude, do-it-yourself attitude in the Akron, northeastern Ohio, especially area, where if the scene wouldn't write about you, you start a fanzine and write about yourself. If there's no major label was going to come down and hear you, so like Nick, you start your own record company. Yeah, there were a few recording studios in Cleveland, but they were very expensive. And somebody like Mark Price took some of his savings or borrowed money from parents, and bought an 8-track machine. Mm-hmm. And Rick Daley was working at General Tire as a computer IT guy, and he bought a TIAC 8-track. So. It's all DIY. Literally means do it yourself, or build your own system, build your own almost a parallel to what was going on in Cleveland. The radio station maybe WKSU at that time, but we had our own magazine, Blank, it was called. We had 2 recording studios, and we had places to play.
We had our own record label too.
And your own record, our own, hometown record label.
We did what we had to do to get, to make it all work and let the world hear what we were doing.
Right. We had to build a parallel universe
Yeah.
to the powers that be.
And, I was very naive about all this because before I lived in this area, I lived outside of Detroit. And Detroit radio, all the stations totally featured the local bands. I mean, to me, bands like SRC and the Frost were as big as, Jimi Hendrix.
Right.
And it always amazed me that none of the Cleveland major stations would ever play any Akron bands.
I'm not going to knock WMMS, but boy, could I knock WMMS.
You got to.
Okay, MMS was this monster, huge radio station in cahoots with the Scene magazine and the Balkan Brothers who booked the shows. It was this holy triumvirate. And they had a lock on Attitude. And, they did great things. They broke David Bowie. They broke Bruce Springsteen.
Roxy Music,
and great. They were a huge force. But the FCC requires local content for your license, which they would maybe play 3 o'clock in the morning on Sunday. Some local records, unless it fit their format. Now, I don't know if I have time to go through this, but I became really good friends with, and you're welcome to edit it out. But this is one of my favorite stories. So here we go. Murray Saul. I became friends with Murray Saul when I was in Tin Huey. Murray Saul wound up marrying the sister of my best friend when I was growing up in Cleveland, Beth Koblitz. Murray Saul was famous for at 5 o'clock on Friday. He would do this bellowing, salute to the weekend. It began here, and he would say it was called the Get Down. Yeah. And, he would have this great gravelly voice. And he was actually the ad salesman, his day job, an ad salesman. But he's a real character, and he was famous for this. And one day he came to Kent, and we were talking, and he said, Chris, I said, man, this station won't play Tin Huey. I even wrote Hump Day, which was a slang expression that Kid Leo would use to describe Wednesday. Wednesday was Hump Day, so I wrote a song called Hump Day to get on the radio. And Murray Saul took a paper napkin, and he's talking to me in this kind of gravelly voice, Chris. And he goes, I got a break character. He drew a parabolic curve on the napkin, and he said, all right. And then he pointed to the top of the parabolic curve and said, Chris, now this is where, Bruce is, and this is where Rock's Music is, and David Bowie, they're up here, and they sell a lot of Toyotas, they sell a lot for Rick Case, they sell a lot of Hondas for, that. And then he points down to pretty much the tail end of the bell-shaped curve and puts his pencil there and goes, no, Chris, this is where Tin Huey is. And you're going to edit this, but he said, and Tin Huey ain't going to sell it off your Toyota.
That's beautiful.
Okay, so
that's got to stay. That's a great story. Wasn't Murray Saul's thing? He was like, I always found it annoying. It was like, you got to get down. Got to get down.
Yeah, exactly. Very good imitation.
That's
but that was the mentality.
Yeah. But what you just said, first of all, Hump Day is a great song. It deserved to be played. But what an accomplishment. I remember there's a time of the day where they would take requests, and they would actually honor the request. You'd say, I want to hear this song by television. They'd play it. So I waited for weeks. I finally got to Kid Leo, what would you like to hear? Well, something by Bizarros, and he hung up on me. So that's
that says it. Yeah. Yeah, so we had no joy, but I probably lost the train of thought here, but
we're back to the Waitresses.
Back to the
Waitresses.
Waitresses.
The foundation of that,
so you can tell big lies in all of this, and I was in Tin Huey, and I was writing, and I was a baby writer. You couldn't really write to a brief yet, or whatever popped out. And I came up with I Know What Boys Like, and I played it for the Tin Huey guys, and I got the fisheye because it's like that is not us, and whatever, and then I had known Patty when I was on the Numbers Band, and
Patty Donahue,
and she was kind of a girl about town. And
was she a singer then? Was she ever?
No, she'd never been in a band. Well, she had won some girls had done a Supremes melody for high school. That was it, and she I literally I've said this before. I went to Walter's Cafe on a lunch hour and banged on a beer bottle and said, I got this song, I need a female singer. Anybody want to do it? And she stuck her hand up and said, yeah, I'll do it. And I had this little motorcycle, and we went over to Rick Daley's, and she did the vocal, and she was great. She was fine. And we did a few other things, and kind of that was it. And that because Tin Huey began to take off, and that stuff was in the can.
Right.
And Tin Huey, really compressing the story, unfortunately ran its course. And the music business people that we knew kept saying that I Know What Boys Like is a hit. And I didn't know, okay, so what do I do? Well, when Tin Huey blew up, once again I said, I don't want to be in a band anymore. I just want to be a songwriter. The only place we were popular was in New York. I had loved New York, so I moved to New York in 1979, October of '79. And long story short, I had an acetate of I Know What Boys Like. I played it for a DJ at a club called Danceteria. His name was Mark Kamens. That's when DJs still played records, didn't scratch yet. That had not been invented yet. And he asked if he played the acetate. People danced it. He said, "This is great. Can I keep it?" He took it up to Island Records the next day. I got a phone call at 10 in the morning. They said, "Come up here. They really love your record." And came up there. They wanted to sign me for a single, "Where's Your Band? We need a B-side." There is no. It's an imaginary bands in Ohio. It says, "Well, we need a B-side." I called Patty. She was in and out of school because she would do like a work study. She'd work. Kent was on the quarter system. It was really inexpensive, so she would work for a quarter, take a quarter off, and then go back in and whatever. And she was mid-quarter, and I said, "Hey, I don't know where this is going to go. You want to come to New York?" And I got this song. I got a B-side called "No Guilt," and it's different than the kind of sexy, teasy Boys Like. It's a richer thing about women and more of a balanced personality. Be a nice twofer. She said sure. And Bob Bassone, the boyfriend at the time, I had mailed Patty my last $50 for a bus ticket. Bob Bassone put her on the bus, and she came, and we did No Guilt with a bunch of musicians who I had found who were a lot of them were in the Contortions, and they went on to be the Ray Beats, and we put together a live band, and the single did well, and well enough that somebody wanted, our contract was sold from Island Antilles to ZE, and ZE wanted to make an album, and we were on the road a lot because the single didn't go. I'm making the gesture of a huge skyrocket, but it hit a plateau, but it stayed there. So we would play college towns wherever it was on the radio. So then I written up for an album, record the album. ZE loses its distribution. They got dropped from WEA. So we're in limbo for like 6 months, just doing what we're doing. Trying to stay afloat, trying to keep the band going. albums in the can.
I know what boys like. I know what guys want. I know what boys like. I got what boys like. I know.
We wind up on Polygram, but that August of '81, Michael Silka had said, "Why don't you, I want to do a Christmas album of all my bands." Now, Wazee was an amazing label, but it was very, very eclectic, and there were a lot of weird outsider people. Alan Vega from Suicide, Lydia Lunch. Okay, these are not warm, fuzzy people that you would, associate. Yes,
The Coconuts.
Kid Creole and the Coconuts. Yes, August Darnell. And they wrote great within their thing, Christmas songs. But Michael said, "I want you to write a Christmas song," and I go, "Oh man, that's the last thing we need. We're trying to. Where's our album and what the wow." And I did it. We did it. We were pros. We did the best job we could in August, and then early September. I think we had 3 days at Electric Lady, and then we forgot about it. Mm-hmm. And so now up comes Christmas, and he puts out that record and the Christmas song even before our album came out, and we had forgotten about it, and it began to get play. Yeah. But then he got some distribution, and then in February of '82, I believe he put out the album, and inadvertently, the Christmas song was a nice setup for the album.
Right.
Really? Wow.
Right. That's okay. That's really interesting. And of course, Christmas rapping is now amazingly becomes kind of a Christmas classic song that's played every year, and people, everyone knows that song.
It's
so
traditional now.
No, people don't know that song until you sing a little bit. Oh yeah, that
that's
one.
Very true. That's very true. Yes, yes.
It's the other way around.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
Words Christmas rapping are not anywhere in the
song.
Right,
exactly. So this is From Akron and Beyond. I'm Bob Ethington with my co-host Nick Nicholas. We're talking to Chris Butler. And we've gotten through the Tin Huey years and the Waitresses years, and we could go a lot further into that. But since we have a limited amount of time, there's a few things I'd like to get to that you probably haven't talked about as much. So when the Waitresses came to an end, did you stay in New York then?
I did. Okay. I did. I stayed in New York, and I had to reinvent myself. I was really crushed. It ended really badly. No point going into it. Yeah. Once again, I was through with bands. Yeah. I had to reinvent myself. I became a freelance writer for music mags. The only thing that I ever really loved about music, aside from songwriting, was playing drums. So I got myself a drum set, and I began to practice drums. And I was doing freelance writing, and I wrote songs because I thought that cool heads would prevail and that the Waitresses would reform and we would need material. That did not happen. I continued along with that for quite a while, 10, 15 years maybe. Playing drums I played drums with Richard Lloyd from Television, the other guitarist from in Television, and a bunch of other people. There was a lot going on in New York. It was there were a lot of get together for one kind of show thing. There was this thing called Losers Lounge, where it started out as a joke where you did rock songs in a kind of sleazy lounge fashion, but it grew to be like tributes. And I was kind of multi-instrumentalist, so I could do various things. I did a Joe Meek show, which was fabulous, and what else did we do? The Shags, a tribute show, and just a whole bunch of this stuff. And playing with various people. And I continued to write, and I decided to put out my own records, and I did 5 or 6 of those, and that's pretty much.
Well, you were also a producer.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Of other artists.
I produced other artists. I did everybody's, not everybody's, but I did a lot of people's first records because I guess I was the economy choice. Freddie Johnston, Joan Osborne, They Might Be Giants. I did early records. Giants were. This just came up on Facebook the other day because I had a drum machine and they didn't have a drum machine, so I became their drum programmer and kibitzer. And then
Really?
the joke is that they finally got Elise's drum machine, so their drum machine, laid off my drum machine. So I lost that job.
Battle of the Drum
But
Machines.
I produced a bunch of. But at that time, I was living in Hoboken, and there were two great recording studios in Hoboken, Water Music and Waterfront Music, and very different. And I produced a lot of local bands, wonderful local bands, and I kept my finger in. I kept writing my own stuff, and I began to go back and forth more to the Akron area.
Right.
And my mom was here. The Tin Huey friends, were certainly here. I went through a divorce. I had a girlfriend here, so a lot of reasons to come back. And not everybody's experience is the same because obviously there's still people there. But gradually, I either outgrew or New York began to eject me because it gets very, very expensive to live there, and you're just hustling the rent. You're not doing anything while you're there. You're not doing anything culturally. Yeah. And I kept moving. I edited a magazine once. Started out in the West Village, then went to Brooklyn, then went to out on Long Island, and then back to Hoboken. And eventually I began to come back here. In 2005, I bought my house because the Spice Girls did Christmas wrapping. The Spice. I remember I was working on this really interesting, creative, idiosyncratic piece of music, and I was playing drums with Richard Lloyd, and I was writing for a real eclectic magazine, and the Spice Girls, the squarest, most inside, most mainstream. They covered. I could not.
They covered Christmas wrapping on that.
They covered Christmas
and
wrapping.
And it sold a lot of records.
And it sold a buttload.
Yeah,
of
that was
records.
when they were at the height of popularity. So it was perfect timing.
And thank God it was on. It was on every one of their. They did. That was the era of multiple releases. You had a CD. You had a single. You had a CD single. You had all these permutations of releases, and that song was on every one of it, and it's a terrible version. Shh! Don't tell anybody. If your sons and daughters were once Spice Girls fans, but I'm so glad they did it because it paid for my house.
It bought you a house.
Thank you.
Well, when I started playing with you guys, and I was in Tin Huey. You were in Hoboken then.
Yeah.
We were kind of going back and forth
Right.
and stuff. And I've always been happy and proud when I look at my Maxwell's T-shirt that we got to play Maxwell's a
Yes,
couple
we
times.
did.
And because of course it's gone now.
Yeah.
And that was such an
Yeah, it's
epic
gone.
club.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a cool experience.
Yeah, most of New York, it's gone.
Yeah.
It is everything you move there for me and my generation.
Yeah.
CBGBs.
The Loft Jazz scene, CBGB, all of that.
Yeah.
The wonderful underground. It is. You have to be. In order to be a starving artist, you have to have a trust fund.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And there's no dance venues. There's no. It's awful. And
Isn't it true that it's almost like what's it called, pay to play there in New York?
Oh yeah, there's pay to play.
Which never happened.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
when we were playing,
Yeah,
you'd be a talented band, and they'd want you, and you played.
Yes.
And they paid
Yes,
you.
and please, we should not mention this because the club owners in northeastern Ohio, it's not a fortune, but they do pay. They pay the bands here, and that is wonderful. Thank you.
Honest
Let's
people.
hope they never wise up.
Yeah, right.
Don't tell them.
None of them are allowed to go to New York ever.
Yeah, shh. Don't tell them.
We won't belabor the point, but I have to say that that's so true about New York. I mean, first time I was there was in when we played at Danceteria and Hurrah
record nights.
Yeah, and New York was so different then, and granted I was younger, so I felt maybe more immune to the danger. I remember like being in the Village and there was a fight out in the middle of the street and stuff. Didn't bother me at all. Now, old man,
Hey,
I'd be like,
it's Saturday night at Kent.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
On
exactly.
Water Street.
You'd be the one
Exactly.
that'd be, going through his pockets.
But then it was as every time it was still great up until to my sensibilities, until 9/11. It seems like things started changing after that, coincidentally, I guess.
Yeah.
And it just seemed like it almost seemed there was a period where every month or 2 months you'd hear like, the Carnegie Deli closed. All these famous landmarks, restaurants and clubs and bookstores.
St. Mark's Cinema, now Theater 80, the great black and white theater on St. Mark's Place. That's in jeopardy.
Yeah.
That's the latest one.
Yeah.
Gem Spa.
It's amazing. So it's just it really isn't the same.
No.
Now, abrupt change of subject here. Something else I'd like to ask you about, Chris, is you being in the Guinness World Book of Records
Oh, that's right.
That was fun.
for having written the longest song.
Yes.
Tell us about the gestation of that.
Okay. I had come. Thank you for asking this.
I have a copy of that myself.
All right. All right. I wrote a song called "The Devil Glitch," which is me complaining about not being able, having a lot of mechanical things in my life not working all of a sudden, and not having the chops to repair it. All right, simple as that. And there's a repetitive line that goes, sometimes you can fix something by ... And at the end, I did a kind of Rolling Stonesy breakdown where the music stops and it ramps up to the end. There are 12 repeats of that. Sometimes you can fix something by ... I played it for a friend of mine, and I'm named Nick Berezanski, and I'm fully willing to give full credit to him, but I'm not sure. We were drinking a lot of coffee and laughing, and I kind of sheepishly said, God, maybe it's kind of long at the end. Maybe I should cut it. And he goes, no, he said, no, the problem with it is it's not that it's too long, it's too short. What if you kept repeating those lines? I go, oh, that's funny. I went home and I started writing. Next thing I know, I had another 12. Oh, then I had another 20. Oh, and 3 months later, I had over 550. And I thought, oh, well, how the hell am I going to record this? Because wow, this is early days of digital audio workstations and using the computer as the recording medium. It's still tape or ADAT or whatever. ADAT being a digital format on VHS tapes. I thought, what if we made it a community project? There was a wonderful engineer in town named Scott Anthony, and he was actually a beta site for beginning for a company that was making a digital audio workstation software, editing software, really early before Pro Tools. And I had all of these lyrics, and he worked at a recording studio in downtown Manhattan, and it was still on 24-track tape. I put a click track down, a metronome track to keep time. I played the acoustic guitar, and I had this, long sheet of dot matrix printed out, lyrics, and I recorded all of the 550 verses in like 20-minute chunks. Took a break, went to the bathroom, took a throat lozenge, and did all that. Then we broke up pieces of that into 3, 4, 5-minute segments, and put it on the ADAT format, which is a VHS cassette, and was popular around the world. It was the first semi-pro digital recording system that a lot of people used because it sounded great and it was digital. Mm-hmm. So we put the chunks on the ADATs, and I mailed them to people around the world and said, here's the backing track. You put something on it, and anything. It can be anything. You want to play music, that's fine. You want to do tuned vacuum cleaners, I don't care. They eventually sent this back to me, and Scott, we transferred it into this computer program and gave it a test with the company on the phone, because can you imagine how large the file is for this? Right. So the computer is straining to do this. Well, he edited it back in together. It came out at like 84 minutes or something. Well, remarkable. Okay, hooray! The computer didn't explode, and there it is. Well, what do you do with it? Because a CD at the time could only hold 74 minutes. Mm-hmm. So I had to cut some people out and got it down to actually 69 minutes, because I wanted to include the short original Double Glitch song. And I put out this CD, and it has everybody on it from my mom to whatever, members of Tin Huey, Mars Williams from the Waitresses, on and on and on. Just a lot of wonderful bands that I knew from North Jersey when I was living in Hoboken. And we put this out, and I thought, I wonder, I sent a copy to the Guinness people and said, I think I might have done something here, whatever qualification is. And to my surprise, I got a phone call and a letter back saying, yeah, you did. We think you might have, a longest pop song or something here. But I didn't know this. With Guinness, you need to verify. You need to present supporting documents and or information. Well, I went to musicologists, and I went to all of this, and I said, well, what about, Alice's Restaurant? It's 19 minutes. My thing was 69 minutes long. And most of it's talking. Okay, that doesn't qualify. What about the Iliad or the Odyssey? They are meant to be sung. They are meant to be sung. When Homer wrote them, they were recited as a song. Anybody remember the song? And or is there a recording of it? No. There was a guy in Texas, his name I can't remember, who had done something 20 minutes long, but most of it was instrumental. That's not a song. Mm-hmm. People will say, what about a Grateful Dead jam, or what about a symphony? Yeah. Those aren't songs. In the United States, the definition of a song is a lyric with a melody. Everything else is accompaniment. Mm-hmm. Even Flaming Lips say they did a 25-hour song. Mm-hmm. It's instrumental. Most of it's instrumental. Mm-hmm. Anybody can, record a lot of stuff and edit it together. Right. It's not a song. Right. Sung song. Okay, so lo and behold, hanging on my wall right now is a certificate from Guinness saying, for one brief shining moment, 97, 98, I had written the world's longest pop song. And when the book came out, there's me on one page and the Spice Girls on the other page.
Really?
Yeah.
You can't escape them.
Now, I guess somebody else has done longer songs now, but Guinness retired the category.
But now, how long is the song?
Oh, well, wait, there's more. Because the people who were cut bitched, rightfully so. Along comes the Internet. Mm-hmm. There's no time limit on the Internet. Right. So my programming friend, Scott, Anthony, the engineer, we built a site called the Infinite Glitch. They built a site called the Infinite Glitch. Okay, and I began to ask other people now. So we uploaded it. We edited back in the people who were cut, and now it's 76, 78 minutes. No, 84 minutes long. Mm-hmm. And I said, but wait a minute. Somebody said, well, I want to be on it. Well, okay, you record something, a chunk, and then send it to me. Well, and then we began to edit it in. It's almost 6 hours long now.
Oh, that's great.
It is still too short. I wanted it to go for that. What about the John Cage thing that's going, 800 years?
It's like an organ piece.
Yeah, an organ piece.
Yeah.
I think I saw on the news the note just shifted.
Okay.
Or something.
Yeah.
It's not a song.
Right.
All right. So, now it's almost 6 hours long. It's too short. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're in the sound of my voice, I need submissions to this project. Please contact me either through the station, Facebook, or whatever. All you have to do is come up with a whole lot of lyrics that go, sometimes you can fix something by... ... Include your own life experience. I want this song to include the sum total of human knowledge. Accompaniment can be anything. One of my favorites is a guy whose father is behind him firing off an arc welder. It can be anything. It can be anything. There's also tools. There's a click track and an acoustic track up on the Infinite Glitch, .net site. You can download the backing track, but it's better if you come up with something and send it to me, and I will edit it in. It's too short.
Keep it going.
It's too short.
So I have a couple things I want to get to before we run out of time.
All right.
So the first thing is a natural transition from Devil Glitch, because you were talking about how the song is based on, the lyrics are based on basically having some piece of equipment or whatever that has something broken and you're not able to fix it.
Right.
Your latest project is called It Works.
It Works.
Which seems to me to address almost a specific idea.
Exactly, and also it goes back to the Tin Huey song, I Could Rule the World If I Could Only Get the Parts.
Right,
well,
right.
all my life I've come up with ideas or have found cool things that didn't work because one part was missing. And you go to the hardware store or whatever. This is very much the lyrics in I Could Rule the World, where they don't make them anymore. Well, heck, here's this beautiful thing that's really cool that's missing one part. So this has bogged me down time and time again in my life. And I decided that I was going to have a project where I'll take a little money aside and remanufacture things that are missing a part that will make them cool and work again and function as they should. I started with kind of what I know. I'm doing a couple obscure drum parts, one for Slingerland drums, and I just did one for Premier drums. Without going into details, they're very obscure. It's only the people who needs these things, but the brief for the project is they don't make them anymore. We need it. I'm going to make them. I'm going to make them. And you can spin it out and go, all the industrial lore here in Akron, the great machine shops and the expertise in polymers and whatever. Who knows where this is going to go? I've already had someone come to me and say, there's a certain year of Cadillac where there are these rubber bumper covers, and they are not made anymore. Rubber bumper covers, Akron. All right, so maybe this is the company that's main company. It's not even a company yet. Idea that's guaranteed to lose money. Okay, so what? But for all the Cadillac people in the world who want these specific things, wouldn't that make their day?
I think it's a great idea.
I thought you were going to mention it. It started with your motorcycles.
No, you're absolutely right.
Oh, really?
Well, you're absolutely right. Yeah, but there are a couple of things that all pointed to this. Aside from being a feeling that it was a mission, I have an old Triumph motorcycle, and they break down a lot, and so you learn about how to, keep them running. By default, and doggone, thankfully with the Triumph or any old British bike, there are places that have tons and tons of parts for the most part. And if not, you need to find someone who can make them. There are things that they do not reproduce anymore, and you have to have them custom made, which has gotten me in touch with wonderful creative machinists. The smartest people I know, I swear, are machinists. They're usually very idiosyncratic and interesting folks, but they're so smart. And it's so bizarre because it's considered a blue-collar job, and there was nothing, low class about it. It's a very, very intense.
It has an intellectual component to it.
Intellectual
Yes.
approach to and I think for one of these guys, I met another guy who has a shop who likes to do things that I'm talking about these parts for fun. He's almost retiring, and he's manufactured these two of these little itty bitty drum parts, and I think this might have legs.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
So people also, with your double glitch submission, let me know if there's something in your life that is really cool. Maybe you have a great old refrigerator that lasts 20 years, that is built like a tank, but it's going to be missing a what? You tell me, and I'll see if I can. We'll see if we can manufacture it. So even if it's a one-off, so you can keep it running. Make, don't buy, and reuse and repair.
Great motto.
Yeah.
So the one last thing I wanted to get into, as our time is coming to an end here, is what you've been doing in Kenmore. And, you had a studio in downtown Akron that we did a lot of work in.
Yeah.
But you ultimately had decided to move to Kenmore, and I think that you're playing kind of a key role in the renaissance of that neighborhood, which is really an interesting thing. So if you could just talk about what you're doing out there.
Well, Kenmore. I remember driving through it a lot and going, I was renting. I had a really great space in downtown Akron, corner Main Market, really great. But I always thought, gee, it's one. I have huge amount of musical equipment and junk, and I really wish I could find a building. And I kept driving through Kenmore, and I met Tina Boyes, who was she's now running for city council.
Yeah, she won the primary.
She won the primary.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's really great people, and she showed me buildings, and there was one that I could afford, and my girlfriend also needed a space. Beth Becker. She is a really talented graphics artist and photographer, and we both needed workspaces. And I found this building, and yes, the area of town is going through a revival. It's targeted by Great Streets program, and Tina. Now they have a new head of the Better Kenmore. He's a great guy. There are it's on its way to being a music row. Just within my 2-block area, there are 5 recording rehearsal studios.
Oh, wow.
There's Lay's guitar shop. There's a guitar department. Yeah. Okay. There is a guy who fixes amplifiers. Yeah. I'm talking with a drummer friend about the possibility of having a drum shop. Okay. Because there is no dedicated drum shop. There is, Guitar Center, where there's never anybody to talk to, or the real next that I know drum shop is up in Willoughby, Stayballs.
They just opened a record store, right?
Right. They just opened a record store.
Well, there's the Rialto Theater.
There's the Rialto Theater, of course.
Live music.
All the time.
You're very right about the lack of a drum shop.
Yeah, we need a drum shop.
Yeah, because I have to order stuff I want online, and I'd hate doing that. I'd like to go to a store.
Right.
Yeah,
and the guitar department has some things, but not everything. Or vintage drum shop. So we might start this summer with pop-up shops for like a swap meet kind of thing. Or something like that, just to begin to start it. But having a proper drum shop that is open until 8:00 on Friday and Saturday,
right.
So that when you find it, when you're playing the Rialto, when you realize you need a head, you can go there and get it.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
there was one shop in New York that could do that. They would stay open late just for
gigs.
For gigs. For gig, you need strings, you need picks, whatever.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think
your building is it? What are you using it for at the moment?
Right now, the front is going to be Beth's workspace. She has all the natural sunlight. The middle one is a control room. Going further back, one more, there's a large live room where I have all my amps and drums, and thankfully it sounds good as a recording room. That was always a crapshoot. And then in the back is a shop and storage, because I'm always building things or repairing things. And it's not going to be open to the public as a commercial studio, but I have some projects, you know, bands that I was working on and my stuff. And, and that's what we're using it for now.
Yeah.
You know,
I think it's a great thing.
It's a playpen.
Yeah.
Really, for us.
Well, you know, we're out of time. I want to say that it's been fascinating talking with you, Chris.
Really?
And the thing I'm already realizing is we've done 2 full episodes with you, and there's probably about a dozen other things I'd like to ask you about.
Absolutely.
So maybe way down the line we'll get you back here and do a sort of a potpourri of Chris.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me, guys, and thanks, Brad.
You bet. This has been From Akron and Beyond. I'm Bob Ethington with Nick Nicholas. Our guest has been Chris Butler. We'll see you next time.